All right, Gerald Butts decided to testify in front of the Justice Committee because, you know what? Look at that man. Isn't he a hero? Isn't that a trustworthy face you want? So Gerald Butts has been nicknamed the Puppet Master, as he is Justin Trudeau's longtime best friend. He went to McGill. Now, if you're from Ontario, where I am, you'll remember him as the guy who ruined our economy. That was him. He came up with green energy, which is something I yell at the sky about because it's literally the most idiotic thing. It increased emissions and destroyed the economy. It was stupid. He was trying to create a national energy plan. So Jody Wilson-Rayburn was the Attorney General, and she testified that the Prime Minister's office, the Prime Minister led by Mr. Butts, who is quite dirty and needs to be probed immediately, put undue pressure on her to change her decision on the SNC-Lavalin decision. So, to recap, SNC-Lavalin is a Quebec-based engineering construction firm. Out of the 250 companies the World Bank does not do business with due to corruption concerns, 117 of them are Canadian. Of those 117, 115 of them are SNC-Lavalin or their associates. Trustworthy people. They also give $100,000 in political contributions illegally to the Liberal Party, and many of their CEOs are longtime donors to the Liberal Party and the Trudeau Foundation. Don't worry, they're completely independent, and it's totally independent liberals of independent liberalism. So, the story then goes that they were seeking a deferred prosecution agreement, which is a new thing the Liberals snuck into law, for their actions in Libya, Muammar Gaddafi's Libya, where essentially they were bribing his son, including paying for $30,000 worth of Canadian prostitutes when he came over. All of this under the auspices of saving jobs. Now, these 9,000 jobs that they were saving, one, they're worried about Montreal. They're moving their headquarters. They are contractually obligated to be in Montreal until 2025. They're an engineering firm, which means most of their people would be scooped up by competitors if they left almost immediately. And they already have $10 billion of backlogged orders, so it's not like they're going to go broke anytime soon. The only thing that would happen is if they were found guilty of what they were obviously guilty of doing, they would not be allowed to bid on Canadian government contracts for 10 years. And being Liberal Party donors, they lobbied the Liberal government, and they in turn lobbied the Attorney General to lobby the independent judiciary. So Stephen Harper sort of set up an independent judiciary head that would be separate from the government, and the only person they're supposed to talk to is the Attorney General. And they have this decision, it's their decision whether or not to seek further prosecution or the DPA that you can hear about, Deferred Prosecution Agreement. She said, nope, obviously guilty, and they don't qualify for it, so they don't have it. And then they send it to Jody Wilson-Raybould, who is a former Crown prosecutor and attorney herself, said, yep, I agree, that's against the law, you're right. And then Trudeau and most of his inner circle, including Bill Morneau, the finance minister, and most of his inner circle, started to put pressure, political pressure on Raybould to change her decision and let SNC plead down to a deferred prosecution agreement, which would essentially slap them with a useless fine and let them keep getting Canadian government contracts, which could go to other Canadian firms who are less corrupt. They just don't give as much money to Justin Trudeau and his cronies. That's what she said. When she refused, she was then shuffled out of the Attorney General position. The new Attorney General, David Lametti, is a complete tool of the Trudeau government, who claims to not know anything about SNC-Lavalin, but then also say they qualify for a deferred prosecution agreement. And his famous contribution to this was, I don't see any need for a criminal investigation because Justin Trudeau says he didn't do it, so if he says he's innocent, how could he possibly be guilty? Brilliant lawyering. So last week, Raybould testified in front of committee under oath, and it was very convincing. She had detailed notes that described, okay, when the pressure started. It started in September, and it continued all the way up until December, and until she was shuffled out of the cabinet and put in charge of Veterans Affairs. Gerald Butts testified that he wasn't aware of any of this pressure being put on, or he wasn't aware that he said he wasn't aware she made a decision on the SNC-Lavalin scandal. He also said it wasn't possible for her to make up her mind because the case hadn't been decided yet. Feminism, right? Women be fickle. You know what they say in the Trudeau government. Women. So Butts, Trudeau, Morneau, all not lawyers, decided to lobby her to change her mind on this decision. Now, the Liberals have sort of tried a couple different smear campaigns against her and against Jane Philpott, who resigned because of their treatment of Raybould, and sort of said, ethically, this doesn't jive with me. So one of the things they're trying to do is sort of set them up as sort of duplicitous turncloaks. Like, they're really, really egotistical, Philpott and Raybould, and when they were shuffled out of cabinet, Raybould was really egotistical, and when she was shuffled out of cabinet, she then turned vengeful on the Trudeau party. And this is just, women be scorned, and then Jane Philpott was her BFF, and you know how women are with their BFF. If one of them leaves cabinet, the other have to. It's like 13-year-old girls using the washroom, right? When your friend leaves cabinet, you have to go and leave cabinet too, and just gossip. Oh my God! Remember, this is the feminist government that is the most feminist thing since feminism. The other thing they're trying to, my favorite argument they're trying to put forward is that they just weren't used to the inner workings of government, right? Philpott was a doctor, a very respected doctor who did a lot of administrative things before she went to government. Like, she didn't really know how the government was, so she couldn't really handle it. Same with Raybould. They didn't understand government with their crazy ethics and principles and making moral stands for the right reasons. I know, women. But remember back in 2015, I do, when we had a gender-balanced cabinet because it was 2015. So when Trudeau and Butts got up there and said, look, we have a cabinet. Are they the most qualified people? No, but look, genitals, look at their genitals, right? They're evenly dispersed genitals. We chose half this type of genital, half extroverted genital, half introverted genitals. That's how we made the cabinet, because it's 2015. Now they're trying to say, they weren't really qualified to be in cabinet, and they didn't have the experience in government for these positions, so that's why they didn't understand all these corruption things. Excuse me, who put them in the cabinet without any experience? Is that a point we're going to talk about? Why are there so many young women just in the cabinet? So it looks like just like Justin Trudeau. She's hot. Put her in. Now, if you've watched the show, I backed Philpott for health minister because she had administrative work. She was well respected within the medical community. She understood the Canadian health system. She had some experience administrating it. That was a fine pick for health minister. I think she gets health minister even if there's no attempt at gender parity. But then she was shuffled out because she was a very competent health minister. We then took a 45-year-old social worker, put her in charge of the Canadian health industry because healthcare isn't that important when you got, made another Indigenous minister position because reconciliation is really, really important to us, except we're going to exile the Indigenous minister and the minister who was in charge of Indigenous affairs. So they took a competent minister and gave it to the Indigenous people, fine as a jester. Then she was shuffled out to be Treasury Board, and then she resigned. So it really shows, it was what I've been talking about, this reconciliation nonsense from the Trudeau government. It's only reconciliation only means agree with everything we say, agree with our ideology, and we'll pat you on the head. Nothing of real or substance. So Butts takes the stand because Raybould decimated them. She had times and dates. Gerald Butts is quoted as saying by her that there wasn't going to be any type of solution that didn't have some sort of political interference. That's illegal. So the most deranged take was Sheila Copps last night on CBC. You have to watch this one. She essentially claimed that Jody Weasel-Raybould was authoritarian because she wouldn't listen to other people and be an authoritarian and override the judiciary. That was the best take by far. But it's important to note that when Butts went before the committee, he was not sworn in. Jody Wilson-Raybould was sworn in. If she lies, that is a criminal offense. If Butts lies, oopsies! So the Liberals voted against swearing him in. They also then used the majority to vote against bringing Jody Wilson-Raybould back to testify again because Butts directly contradicted her. He was like, "Is she lying?" Well, she's not lying, but we review these events differently, which was Trudeau's exact line when he got caught groping that reporter on the ass. The worst part, though, the part that shows how completely BS this is and why the RCMP needs to get involved right now. I don't really care that he wasn't under oath. It just, we knew he was going to lie. It just says, hey, I'm lying. But what the Liberals really messed up was they both claimed to have texts and emails backing up their positions that contradict each other. This is Butts and Raybould. The Conservatives, Lisa Raitt, put forward a motion to subpoena essentially all the relevant texts and emails and SMS messages that would relate to the case of SNC. Right? All the relevant emails and texts both parties claim to have on the case should be available to be viewed by the committee to find out which one of these two is lying. Guess who voted that one down? If you guessed the majority of the Liberals on the committee, you would be right. The Justice Committee voted against getting a key piece of evidence that would determine which one of these two parties is lying. It's a sham. It's an utter sham. The Ethics Commissioner, this Justice Committee, have no power. This is a complete dog and pony show. They're not going to find out anything, and the majority of the committee is Liberals, so it looks like they're just going to vote. If Justin Trudeau could come in holding the severed head of Jody Wilson-Raybould with a picture said, "I did it," and then we'd say, did Justin Trudeau decapitate that lady? Lisa Raitt, yes. Other Conservative, yes. Other Conservative, yes. Eco Khalid, no. Other Eco Khalid, no. This is utterly useless and pointless. This is why the RCMP needs to get involved, because the RCMP actually has power. This is an actual case of obstruction of justice. Right? You can't, I don't even need to, this is one of those things that's so clear that it doesn't even need an analogy to explain. The only people who need this explained to them are Liberal ministers and former Liberal ministers coming out of the woodwork to defend them. Which is another thing I think we have to talk about in this scandal, because one of the biggest bombshells that came from Jody Wilson-Raybould's testimony last week is she claimed that Katie Telford, who is Gerald Butts Jr., Trudeau's chief of staff, claimed that she could provide a string of op-ed writers to sort of support Raybould if she decided to let SNC plead down. She would essentially create a media campaign. And in Butts' testimony, the most interesting thing in Butts' testimony was it wasn't Liberal strategists that were going to write this. He basically indicated that they were going to seek out independent voices within the media, so people who write in the Globe and Mail or the Star and say, "Oh, I'm independent," they would really be approached by Liberal Party operatives and write op-eds that would push the Liberal Party's narrative. Now, if you're watching the show, you probably don't need me to tell you that the Canadian mainstream media is ideologically corrupt to its core. The Toronto Star has in its constitution that it has to take the Liberal perspective. Right? That's how they have to operate. That's part of it. But we all are supposed to pretend like, oh, the mainstream media. And these people are going to get a $600 million bailout from the Liberal government for doing, independent journalism. I love it. The bailout, the stated reason is to preserve independent journalism. Literally, independent journalism. The way we're going to preserve independent journalism is by having the government take it over. You cannot make this up. Only in Trudeau land. Then Michael Wernick came and he testified, and this one was much worse because he's supposed to be an independent. Butts is a complete political operative through and through, and actually came off as more independent than Michael Wernick, who is supposed to be the top impartial public servant in the country. And his testimony started off with, basically, Twitter is mean to me, so this is all invalid because Twitter was intimidating the witness. Pussy. Honestly. Is that the best you can come with? You're the top public servant in the country. You get proven to be an ideological hack along party lines, where you should clearly resign. And your defense is, well, I can say whatever I want because the case against me should be thrown up because Twitter was intimidating me. People said mean things about me on Twitter, therefore I'm innocent. Loser. These losers. Utter losers. And again, the deputy chief clerk, justice deputy, essentially corroborated Jody Wilson-Raybould's story that she brought concerns about this, and people knew she had made up her mind in September. Butts claimed to not know that she had made up her mind until last week. Okay, bud. Okay, dear. Sure thing. What else do we have here? I think that's all you really need to know. Just remember that Justin Trudeau, Gerald Butts are feminists, all right? And we love and believe women unless they disagree with us, those filthy whores.